Is it working? Okay, it's working. So yesterday we learned about adding and subtracting positive and negative numbers, right?
Yeah.
And in the process, we started dealing with negatives and negatives and negatives and negatives, and all next to each other. And we actually started doing something without even realizing it. We actually started multiplying positive and negative numbers without even realizing it. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about multiplying and dividing. Multiplying and dividing positive and negative numbers. Positive and negative. Hope this all fits on the camera. Whoops. Negative numbers. Whew. I think we just made it. Okay. I think we made it. All right. Multiplying and dividing positive and negative numbers. Now, it's really not hard. The hard part is that there are different rules than the rules we talked about yesterday. And so the hard part comes in because people forget which one it is, right? They'll forget, oh wait, was that rule for adding and subtracting, or was that rule for multiplying and dividing? That's where people get all messed up, right? So you've got to keep them separate. You got to remember adding and subtracting, remember what we did, remember the daily bites today, how well you did that, right? Now this is something new, something different. And we are also mathematicians, so we are looking for patterns. So that's the goal in this lecture, is to look for a pattern that relates what I'm about to say. What? What does that mean? Okay, all right. So we're going to look for a pattern. I'm thinking about 3 different ways I could start this, but okay, we'll just go for it. If I had a positive number, 2, and I multiplied it times a positive number, 2 times 2, would I get a positive number or a negative number? I get a positive number. And it would be, what's 2 times 2? It would be 4. So it's positive number times positive number equals 4. So I'm going to actually write that down. For multiplying, I notice that a positive number times a positive number is equal to a positive number, right? Does that make sense? I'm not putting a number in there. I'm just focusing on the sign right now. So a positive times a positive is equal to a positive, right? All right. So now we're going to go over here. We're going to say a negative 2 times a positive 2 is equal to what? A negative 2 times a positive 2, Liam? Negative 4. So it's going to be negative 4. So that's interesting. So you're telling me that when I take a negative number and I multiply it times a positive number, I'm always going to get a negative answer, right?
You're always going to get 4.
Yeah, right. All right, so we've got a negative number times a positive number is equal to a negative number. That's interesting. All right. So again, I'm a mathematician. I'm trying to think like a mathematician. I'm trying to look for patterns, okay? All right, so now we're going to go, oh, I know what we could do totally different. We're going to totally change this. We're going to multiply a positive 2 times a negative 2. Ha ha! This is going to be totally different. What's it, Gabe? Oh my gosh. So notice, yeah, we're getting this pattern again. It's always 4 or negative 4, right? That's really cool. I like that. All right, so we got 2 times negative 2. All right, so we got a positive times a negative is equal to a negative. That's interesting. I thought that was going to be totally different, and it's sort of similar actually to this one. Interesting. All right, so our last one that I can think of is, what if we had a negative 2 times a negative 2, what would that equal, Landon? Yeah. Right. So that would be then negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. I'm actually going to put a plus sign there because that's the one that's hardest for people to get for some reason. It doesn't make sense, right? You know, it's like everybody says, "Oh, well, if you do an evil thing and you do another evil thing, then it makes it good, right?" Well, I know you're going to try that one, but let's not go there yet. Let's say okay. So we're going to do this. Hang on. Negative times negative equals a positive. All right, now we're going to look for patterns. Okay, first question, Elizabeth.
My calculator says it's still the negative.
You probably didn't do it right. You probably have to make sure negative 2.
Yeah, I pressed negative both times, and I've done it about 5 times. It's still saying negative.
But see, what you're doing, what you have to do is the sign negative. You want to show her what I mean? Because on a calculator, if you do this, if you push minus sign 2, and then you do times, and then you do minus, it just canceled out the times on a calculator. And it says, oh, you didn't want to multiply, you just want to subtract. Right? I think. That would make sense, because then that would be negative 2. I don't know, did you figure it out? Forget that, okay. Oops, I'm on camera. I can't believe I did that. All right, so we have this as a positive. Okay, so now we got to look for a pattern. That's interesting. Does anybody see a pattern? Adam.
Like both positives.
Yeah.
Equal positive and both negatives.
Oh my gosh! Wait! Oh my God! Look at this. Would you agree with me that both of these signs are the same? And what do I get when both of the signs are the same and I'm multiplying?
Same sign.
I get a same sign.
Same sign.
Would you agree with me that these two are the same? They're both negatives?
Yeah.
And what do I get as an answer when I multiply them?
The opposite sign.
I get a positive. So I get, when the signs are the same, look at that, and I'm multiplying, I get a positive. Signs are the same, I multiply, I get a positive. This is exciting. Oh my gosh, I gotta write this down. I mean, this is like brilliant. We're gonna make New York Times bestseller list. I mean, it's incredible. So, what is this? So we just said if the signs, this is for multiplying, right? If the signs are the same, thank you. If the signs are the same, then the product means you multiply, right? That product is your answer when you multiply two numbers together. Then the product is positive. All right, so that's one rule that we found, right? Rule number one, it says if the signs are the same when we're multiplying, then the product is always going to be positive, the answer. It's always going to be positive. What else did we notice? Serena, what do you notice?
If there's one negative, then it's going to be, if either number, if either one of them is negative, then it's
Okay, so, yeah, exactly. I'm sorry, Nate, can you turn off the air conditioner? I just realized I thought this was off. Never mind, let me do it. Yeah. I just realized that might be interfering with it.
great lecture.
Sorry. I don't know why that was.
Can't hear anything for the first half hour.
There we go. Hopefully that doesn't screw up the whole thing. I didn't notice that. All right, so say it one more time, Serena. Sorry.
If you have even one number as a negative, then it's going to be a negative.
Okay, so if the signs are different, right? Are different. Can I just say it that way? And you're multiplying them, right? Then the product is negative. Right? So that's pretty cool. So when the signs are the same, when it's positive 2 times positive 2, it's positive 4. When the signs are the same, when it's negative 2 times negative 2, it's still positive 4. Okay, that's good. Now, well, let's talk about dividing. It's the same thing. Ironically, look at this. A positive 2 divide, let's see here, how do I do this? I'll do it over here, and then I'll write this thing here. So I'll do a positive 2 divided by a positive 2. Remember, every fraction is a division problem, right? So I can write 2 divided by 2 like a fraction. I don't have to go 2 and then that little line with the 2 dots, you know. I can just say 2 over 2 is equal to, a positive 2 divided by a positive 2 is equal to positive 1. Right? Everybody's with me, right?
No.
All right, so we just decided that a positive divided by a positive is equal to a positive. Same as this, same as the multiply rule. Now let's try this. Let's try negative 2 divided by 2. What would that be? What would negative 2 divided by 2 be? Hindu. Negative 1. You're right, exactly. So it's the same thing. Look, when you have a negative sign and a positive sign in a fraction or when you're dividing, the signs are different. Oh, this is interesting. This is starting to sound the same. When the signs are different, when you have a negative and you divide it by a positive, you're going to get a negative. But what if we put the negative in the denominator? That'll totally screw things up, right? So we got 2 divided by negative 2. What does that equal? Negative 1, right? So that means negative divided by, positive divided by negative is equal to a negative. All right, now last one, we have a negative 2 divided by a negative 2. What would that equal? Positive 1. Right? Isn't that the rule? Didn't we? In a way, we know that because what's that rule about fractions? If you have the same thing, same value in the numerator that you have in the denominator, what's that always equal? In a fraction, if you have the same thing on the top and the bottom, it always equals 1. 10 over 10 equals 1,000 over 1,000 equals 1. Negative 14 billion over negative 14 billion equals 1. Right? Like they're the same thing, so they have to equal 1. That's very interesting. That means negative divided by a negative is equal to a positive. Okay, so everybody say that. Negative divided by negative equals a positive.
Negative times negative equals a positive.
All right, negative times a negative equals a positive.
Negative times negative equals a positive.
All right, all together. Negative times a negative equals a positive. Negative times a negative equals a positive. Again, negative times a negative equals a positive. Negative times a negative equals a positive. Why? Why? I don't know, right? That's what most people say. But why? Really? Why does a negative times a negative equal a positive? It makes no sense, right? It defies logic. Or does it? Yes. Lucky. Kareem. Jeez, I have 3 friends, and they're all similar names. Yeah.
Well, the reason why it equals 1 is because, think about it, when you write it, 2 divided by 2, you're finding out 2 times what equals 2. Or negative 2 times what equals negative 2.
Right.
But then if you use the rules of multiplying, negative 2 times 1 equals negative 2. Because if it were negative 2 times negative 1, then it would equal positive 2.
Right. Interesting. That's really nicely. That was really nicely done. Very, very good explanation. And I'm going to say one more. I'm going to give you one more thing, and I'm going to give you the definition of minus or a negative sign. I bet you guys have never had that defined, right, in the definition. A negative sign or a minus sign means this. It means this. It's the same thing as this. The opposite of. That's what a negative sign means. So, let's look at this. This says, right there, negative, when I write negative 2, it means it's the opposite of 2. And on a number line, the opposite of 2 is negative 2, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
See what I mean? Now let's look at this. All right, we have a negative 2 now. Times the opposite of a positive 2. Right? So a what am I doing? the opposite. Okay, wait, hang on. We have negative 2 times the. Hang on. So let me do it without the 2. Let me just see this. So we have a negative sign times. Oh, I know. I see what I'm doing wrong. I haven't done this in a while. So this one, I'm going to say the opposite of negative is positive. There we go. The opposite of means multiply, right? The opposite of a negative is a positive. The opposite of a positive is a negative. That's it. Right? It works. If you think of the negative sign as meaning the opposite of a negative is positive. It always works. So creams was probably a better answer, but that's also something that's just kind of worth knowing. So that is how they work. So let's practice a few. I'm going to erase all this. Can I erase it? We found, and this works. These rules work for both multiplying and dividing. The same thing. If the signs are the same, the answer is going to be positive. If the signs are different, the answer is going to be negative. And again, I'm talking really about 2 numbers at a time here, right? I'm not talking about lots of numbers. That's we're going to get into that in a second. But let's just practice these. We'll do a few practice ones, and then I'm going to do one last thing, and then we'll be done with this lecture. Okay. So let's say 12 times, parentheses means multiply, right? Right? So I can use, instead of writing a times sign, I could use parentheses. So I'm going to try that. 12 times a negative 3. Are the signs positive, or are the signs the same, or are they different?
Different.
If they're different, the answer of the product will be negative, right? So, what's 12 times 3?
36.
36. What's 12 times negative 3? Negative 36. Okay. What is 8? Well, how about a negative 8 times 4? Signs are different. It's going to have to be negative. So, negative 32, right? Okay, let's see. Let's say we have negative 4 times negative 5. Ooh, the signs are the same. So, it's going to be positive. Got to be positive. Positive 20. But what if we had positive 4 times positive 5?
Oh.
The signs are the same again, right? So it's going to be positive 20 again. All right. And then dividing. You know, like, I don't know, 12 divided by negative 3. The signs are different. They're different. Therefore, the quotient, that's the answer to a division problem, has to be, did I say product down here? Oh, that was for multiplying, right? I did. Okay, whatever. But if 12 divided by negative 3, the signs are different, so it's got to be a negative. And then 12 divided by 3 is 4. All right. 16. Negative 16 divided by 4. The signs are different. So the answer has to be a negative. And it's 16 divided by 4 is 4. Negative 4. All right, what about this? Negative 200 over negative 100. Oh, the signs are the same. So that means it's got to be positive. Whenever I have this like in a fraction, I have a negative and a negative on top of each other, I just do this. They become positive, right? This just helps me remember. I don't have to worry about negatives. Just positive. So 200 over 100, 200 divided by 100 is 2. Right? Positive 2. Yes, Sal.
You can also cross out the zeros on the fraction.
And yes, the other thing you can do is you can say, whenever there are 2 numbers end in 0, and they're on, one's on top and one's on the bottom of a fraction, you can cross out those 2 zeros. That's 0 and that's 0. But then if they both have another 0 right after it, you can cross those out. So it equals 2 over 1, which is 2. Good. Awesome. All right. The last thing, what was the last thing I was going to do? Oh, I know it. Okay, watch. So we've been talking about when you have 2 numbers, right? That's what that rule was about, the 2 numbers. But now what if we have more numbers that have different signs? So then suddenly you have, instead of having 2 negatives, you might have 3 negatives. this is going to look like what we learned about yesterday. And they were in some of the daily bites. So, let's say you had this. -2 times -2 times -2. Oh, so I do it, you can first start it this way. You can say, oh, well, -2 times -2 is what? It's 4, right? Positive 4, because the signs are the same. It's going to be positive. Times the -2. The signs are now different, right? So it's going to be -8, right? Now, we'll do another one like that. Okay, we got -4 times -1 times 2 times -2. All right? So now it looks more complicated, but it's not so bad. I have -4 times -1 is, signs are the same, answer is positive. Positive 4, right? So we have 4. So we have 4 now times this. Let's do this first. What is 2 times -2?
-4.
Signs are different, so it's going to be -4. So now I'm going to multiply this 4 times this -4. The signs are different, so it's got to be negative. What's 4 times 4? 16. There we go. Now, when you're multiplying, you can use this amazing rule. If the number of negative signs in a what would you call that? What?
Equation.
Well, it's not an equation. Equation has to have an equal sign, right? It's an expression. It's actually a monomial. Actually, that's what you call that, a monomial. But that's like a big term. But when you're multiplying 4 numbers together, or any number of numbers together, you can count the negative signs. And if there are an even number of if there are an even number, I guess I should write that. If there are an even number of negative signs, then it's positive. If odd, then negative, right? If odd, then negative.
Didn't we write this sign yesterday?
Yeah, you did. But we didn't really talk about it as a multiply thing. We talked about it as just next to each other. But the reason that was true yesterday is because next to each other, remember how they always were separated by parentheses? And parentheses always means what? Multiply. So really, we were doing multiplying ones when we were talking about this one yesterday. Because when I have this, well, actually, I don't want to reset it. So right here, when I have something like this, negative, brace, minus, bracket, minus, parenthesis, minus 8, parenthesis, bracket, brace, right? This is like a parenthesis, right? So it means multiply. This is like a parenthesis, it means multiply. This is like a parenthesis, well, that is a parenthesis. It means multiply, right? Negative times negative is a?
Positive.
Positive times negative is a?
Negative.
Negative times negative is a?
Positive.
So it equals positive 8. But now we can use this as if there's an even number of negatives, 1, 2, 3, 4, there are, it's going to be positive. Right? So it always works. Up here, is that going to be negative or positive? Don't look at the answer. Negative or positive?
Negative.
It's got to be negative. There's an odd number of negatives. What about that one? Oh, sorry. Yeah. I'm holding up, I'm not covering up the right thing. Yeah, it's going to be, there's 3 negatives. It's got to be negative. Now I just multiply the numbers. Doesn't matter. I figure out the negative sign or positive sign first and multiply away. All right. So that's it. We'll stop this puppy.